Today I'm going to show you a wide variety of methods to use reverb in your sound design. I'm going to start with a vocal from my friend Oli Holiday's Splice Pack. I can just drag it straight onto a MIDI track and it'll convert to simpler. And then I'm going to go to slice mode. And we can do vocal chops instantly. And then I'm going to get hybrid reverb. If you didn't know, there's two sides to hybrid reverb. The convolution mode where you drop in a sample and it takes the impulse response from that. And there's this algorithm section where you can pick one of these 5 algorithms that all sound cool depending on which situation you want to use them in. So I want to make like a vocal pad kind of thing. So I'm going to use this prism algorithm for right now. Then I'm going to turn up this dry wet to 100%. And then I'm going to turn on this freeze button, which if I had pressed it after the sample was playing, it would just freeze the vocal. So like... But if I press this arrow, it will continue to freeze whatever is being played before it. So that's too much. I'm going to play with some of these slices to see which one might sound the best to freeze. That one. So I'm just going to get a new audio track and take audio from that vocal, then arm both of them, turn on hybrid reverb. I decided I wanted multi-band compression afterwards. Then I'm going to do Command-Shift-T to get a new MIDI track and drag our recording in. Going to need to align this more. Then I want to change it to sampler so I have more control over it. I want to turn on the sustain loop mode, give it some room, and turn up the crossfade. So this is going to hold it forever if I hold down these notes. And I want to see what pitch this is, so I'm going to press C on my keyboard. And it looks like it's G sharp, so I'm going to make the root G sharp. And now we can turn it into an actual pad by turning up the attack and the release, maybe sustain a little bit. And maybe turn up the voices more. And I'm a compression fiend, so I'm going to get OTT, just turn down the amount and then turn up the time scaling a little bit so it's not super squash sounding. And I always play with turning off the low end. I feel like you could leave it at that if you're satisfied, but you could go to the filter section and make it a bandpass. Make it 12 decibels slow. And then if you go to the modulation section, you can maybe map an LFO to the filter, turn up the keys so it's different for each key you press. Just so you can hear what it's doing. I'm just gonna make it really slow and not modulate that much. I'm gonna turn off free trigger. I might actually change it to this morph mode so you can make it like kind of like half bandpass. And then before the OTT, I think I'm just gonna have this echo on ping pong. I'm gonna just filter it a little bit. Then I'm gonna get some MIDI down. I'm gonna quantize these. Get that legato. Now I'm thinking we can get some kind of rhythm on top of that. So I'm gonna get a wavetable. I made it where my default wavetable is like kind of like a pretty preset. So I just have the unison on noise. And then by default, I have the 2 LFOs wobbling the pitch a little bit. So I got one that's like a slow, like over time. Like if I turn it up. I just have that modulating by 10 cents. Then I have another LFO that's more vibrato. Looks like this. And then you can right click and save as default preset. And then anytime you load in a wavetable will be that. But also you don't have to do that. I just like this preset. So I'm going to get hybrid reverb again. And I want to demonstrate the convolution section this time. So if I turn the dry wet up to 100%, like say I get some kind of drum sample from the sidebar, like this tom, I can drop that in as the impulse response. And our input sound will kind of take the shape of that impulse response. And the size is basically the pitch and length of the sample. So if you turn it to 50, it will be an octave up. And you can also turn down the decay. But something that I think is really cool is if you try to find a drum loop in the BPM of your song and drag that in. You'll hear that it'll basically create a rhythmic delay. Maybe if we get one without a kick drum, maybe make it halftime. It's kind of like a more timbre-rich vocoder in a way, except it's not actually vocoding. And if you don't have any drum loops in your library, we can go ahead and make one really quick by getting a drum rack. And then in the samples tab on the sidebar, I might filter for one shot, percussion, and maybe I'll filter for just random percussion sounds. Try dragging around like 128. And if you watch my clips video, you'll know where I'm going with this. I'm just gonna go to the clips tab, go to drum clip, and then get a percussion clip. Then I'm just going to look through a ton of these. That sounds like it's a cool groove, so I might just drag that on here. And I like to get the pitch device to kind of scroll through which samples I want it to play. And if you go to the control section and map this random panning to a macro, and then map that to all siblings, we can also change the panning of what will be our impulse response. And that's all we really need, so we can just Command B to bounce it to a new track. And then we can go back to our wavetable track and drag this new impulse response in. Maybe see what it sounds like at normal speed. Double speed? I think half speed's my favorite. So I'm just going to hold Option and drag this to our wavetable track, then just shorten all of this just to be like kind of like stabs. And this might be a little bit of a fucky way to do this, but I'm just going to duplicate this 4 times, and I'm just going to make each chord have its own track. And then I'll highlight all of these sections and press Command B. And you'll see it bounced all of those tracks individually. So we can delete all of the extra wavetable tracks, and then we can move all of these audio clips to be one track. And if you think it's too sudden, you can just highlight all of these and do Command Option F to make the loops fade between each other so it's not so like clicky or sudden. You can probably fade them a little bit more. Maybe just a little bit of like a grain delay, like octave layer. Maybe we can even spice up this loop that we generated. And we can kind of do the opposite thing and bounce each of these individual chords. And on the percussion track, turn on convolution mode and drag these impulses in of our chords. And then Command G group that into a rack. Open up the chain window, then duplicate this 3 times, and then drag our other chords into the other chains. Then after that, we can open up the chain window, Command A, select all of our chains, drag out all these blue bars, and distribute ranges equally. Then just to make it handy, we can map the blue bar up here to a macro. And now we can make our drum loop follow the chord progression. We're probably going to want to make the decay on all of these like a lot shorter. So maybe like 150 for each of these. And it's annoying that you can't map this to all siblings. And since this is a really short decay time, this is going to sound a lot more kind of clean compared to when we use the loop as an impulse response on the chords. And it could also be cool to turn up the size an octave maybe. And then we're just going to want to automate our macro we picked earlier to make sure the right chord is playing at each time. Might use the Glissando MPE tool just to make the chords glide. Okay, so I pulled out that vocal chop again and got another hybrid reverb. And something you can do with all types of reverbs is use this pre-delay knob to kind of give a slapback effect. So I'm going to turn this completely on algorithmic mode and put it on Prism. I think I'm also going to get the note length device so the chops don't carry on for too long so you can hear what the pre-delay is doing. Okay, so now I want to make a drop idea, and I want to show how useful reverb can be when making womps and drop kind of synths. So say we make a kind of like basic. Like whoop kind of sound. Reverb can sound really good on bass, and you get something like an OTT after it. And I like to do multi-band compression right after. So you can pretty much drown any bass in reverb and make the drop have like a huge impact womp. But I did compress it a ton, and I think we can get some cool one shots that we can maybe use as like a drop sound. Ooh, I like this one. Okay, just for reference, like this is with no reverb. See how much of a difference that makes? Because these are just like basic ass like little zaps, but then the reverb on. Whoever said don't put reverb on sub bass was gatekeeping. I'll do a similar thing. Got this Oya vocal again. I think I might do something kind of like where I wash out even more reverb. Then I have this device called AutoGate. It's basically my version of Kiloheart's Transgate, except it has velocity and you can map it to shit. I still have a lot of plans for it, so it's not in the final form, but I think it'd be cool to get some kind of volume automation on this like reverb. I do the same thing where I OTT the fuck out of it. Slide swing. Volley impulse response maybe could be cool. I should probably stop working on this now, but let's just listen to what I got. There's probably a million more reverb tricks and tips out there. I just try to see how many I could fit in one session. Tell me something good that happened to you this week in the comments, and get my packs and do the YouTube stuff.